So after the two old radio pieces, um, the first one was Jack Benny, very famous comedian. You guys would never have heard of him, but he had a very successful radio show, which you heard a part of. And then he actually transitioned to TV, which is what a lot of the companies did. The same companies that had radio networks and produced radio programming got into TV. It included CBS and NBC. And they just took the shows and brought them to life, put them on stages and brought them to life in many, many cases. And then the third, and then of course you heard the Armour hot dog commercial, famous jingle. And jingle and use of music is obviously something that's done quite a lot on radio to take advantage of the sound and to come up with something memorable about the product via a jingle. And then the third thing you saw this time rather than listen to was the first television broadcast. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the company that did that, which was RCA. And RCA stands for Radio Corporation of America. It was originally developed and owned by General Electric, which I think could be argued was the Microsoft of its day, bringing electricity, lighting cities, developing recording, all kinds of amazing new capabilities. Just the use of electricity and electric appliances everywhere. I mean, just think about what that did to the country and to the world. Company founded by Thomas Edison, an amazing inventor. But the government decided that GE just controlled a few too many things, and so they had to divest themselves of RCA. And RCA was primarily a hardware company. They made radio sets, they made televisions, but they did also develop the national broadcasting company, NBC, which I guess most of you still know about. So I think you could say that radio and television broadcasting, the companies were, the same companies were involved in both. And then the first banner ad, of course, the internet kind of started poking up in the 80s. Used to be called the Information Superhighway. And Al Gore says he helped invent it. Some of you may remember Al Gore. He was a presidential candidate at one point and Bill Clinton's vice president. And he actually did have something to do with it. And this was the first banner ad that ran on Wired Magazine's website. Wired Magazine was an early and interesting kind of technology-focused magazine. So this ran in 1994. And then this long, very text-heavy slide, which is exactly the kind of slide I don't want you guys to use in your presentations. Because your presentations are sales presentations, for one thing, right? For Ocean Spray, you're selling ideas. And I'm just trying to give you information as simply as I can, but I should have made this bullet points, and honestly, I was just a little bit lazy, but I also thought it was kind of interesting for you to maybe look at and take a minute to read. This is pulled from Wikipedia, and this is mobile, and first portable handset in 1973, which also has to do with radio technology. And SMS text messaging was done in Finland in 1994, the first SMS, the first text message. And then that was in 94, and then 6 years later in 2000, mobile advertising was introduced, and now, of course, it's the fastest growing type of advertising. It's an amazing mix. I mean, internet brought trackability in a huge way to advertising and influenced all of advertising. Advertisers began demanding that all their ads be more trackable, which has put some burdens on some of the other media types. And, of course, mobile, which is this device that we carry with us all the time, is really just beginning, I think, to get into what it's going to be. It's still in the growth phase, very much so. So we've looked at U.S. media trends, and we started with out-of-home, the bills that were posted and are still being posted, though now they're turning digital more and more. We talked about newspapers and print and magazines being a very vital form of communication, particularly newspapers kind of carrying the burden for lots of communication for many, many, many years. We talked about the introduction of radio in the beginning of the 1900s, and then the introduction of TV in the late 30s and 40s, and then the internet in the 80s and 90s, and now mobile. And so overall, within the world of media, I think there's some basic trends in the U.S., that there's a move from non-digital to digital for everything. I think we can all recognize that. Also, there used to be, just a few types of media to listen to. In the heyday of broadcasting, there were only three major networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC. And people sat and watched those every night, and you could buy an ad at roughly the same time on all three networks and reach 80% of U.S. households. It was called road blocking. And it's awful hard to do that now. There are very few events that lots and lots of people watch, and they do all tend to be on TV. And there are things like the Super Bowl, of course, would be number one, the World Series, the Olympics. And there's just a general, I think, fragmentation of audiences with media designed to reach specific users. So that the trend is from few to many. Many different ethnic groups, hobbies, backgrounds, all kinds of things. So I'm just going to go ahead and we'll just keep going here. So media types, we made the point that advertising is for new customer acquisition, and we're going to do it. These are different basic types of media: print, broadcast, internet, out-of-home, and public relations, I think, belongs up there somewhere, which kind of almost encompasses social media to some degree. So the first one we're going to talk about is print. What I like to do in class for this is to ask students to bring magazines that they like and can talk about in front of the class. And so what I'd like you guys to do is just think about these same things. If you have a magazine that you subscribe to around, pick it up for a minute and kind of look at it and think about it a little bit. And if you don't, sorry. But most of us read magazines from time to time, even if we don't subscribe. So if you can get your hands on any kind of magazine that you like or read periodically, whatever. So you ask yourself some questions. Why do you read it? Why is it important to you? How do you read it? Do you literally start at the first page and just page right through to the end of the magazine? Some people who love certain magazines do that. I've had students come with a Vogue magazine and say that they just go through every page because they love to look at the ads too. So how do you read it? Do you go page to page? Do you jump around? Do you look at a table of contents and just read the articles you like? Do you look at the cover and only read one article that catches your eye? I mean, how do you read it? How long do you keep it? If it's a weekly magazine, do you throw last week's away when the new one comes? Do you keep them for a while? Who else reads the magazine? So pass-along readership is called as an important factor for magazines. It's not counted in their official circulation, but it's something that if magazines have that as a factor that they like to talk about. So in your case, if you do subscribe to something, who else reads it? When you were living at home and maybe your parents subscribed to magazines, did you read them? And then ask yourself, what ads do you notice and why? And so what pages do ads tend to be on, the right-hand page or the left-hand page? Which is better, do you think, for being noticed? What about the back of the magazine? Is that a good place to be? So placement in the magazine, or some people call it positioning in the magazine, not the positioning of the magazine, not how the magazine is attempting to reach its audience and what it says about itself. I'm saying where the ads positioned or placed in the magazine is a huge factor in how much they're noticed and how much they cost, and it's a big point of negotiation between advertisers and publishers. How much unpaid versus paid content? Now here's what I'm talking about is magazines are typically a very good vehicle for public relations. So people with new products want to reach the beauty editors, the fashion editors, the whatever editors, the accessories editors, food editors, whatever they are, with their product in the hope that there'll be some kind of editorial coverage of the product. That's unpaid content, and it's very valuable and oftentimes more effective than paid content because it implies the endorsement of the publication and an objective review. Is print a good medium for direct response? Why or why not? And is there a corresponding website for the magazine? Do you subscribe to the magazine? Do you also go to the website? How do they work together? So, as an advertising medium, then what are the strengths of print? When would you want to use print? What are the weaknesses of print? And how can you get the most of your investment if you're going to buy magazines? So let's get into that. And here we're talking with print. One key advantage is staying power. Almost depth of sale, in the sense that you can look at any part of the magazine normally for as long as and as often as you want. So you have time to get into a lot of text if you need to explain something. So there's room for depth of sale. You also have pass-along readership. That's another advantage. You have accurate color reproduction in magazines, and particularly for beauty products and fashion, that's very, very important, but it's important for all advertisers. I can tell you, if you can't reproduce Coca-Cola Red, you're not going to get any business from Coca-Cola. Also with magazines, there's some content rub-off in that just appearing in Vogue magazine says something about your product. Magazines have loyal reader bases. So being in the magazine exposes you to people with an interest in a particular topic that believe in the magazine. So again, this rub-off. But one of the key issues with magazines is, will your ad actually be seen? If you don't, not every reader reads every page and goes over every single thing in a magazine. Many jump around, and it's easy for your ad not to be seen. You can hear there's an airplane going over my apartment here. Magazines have companion websites. Magazines also normally have long lead time production times, sometimes a couple of months before your ad shows up in the magazine. So it's not the fastest turnaround necessarily. So those are some of the factors with magazines and print in general. Other kinds of print there's a classic direct mail. That's print, a thing you get in an envelope. Catalogs are print. There's things called group mailers. Advo is a big one, where you get an envelope and you open it up. It's got lots of coupons from different places in it, usually a lot of local advertisers. That's a group mailer. We talked about magazines. Coupons, newspapers are all print. FSI stands for freestanding insert. Those are the color in your Sunday paper. Normally you see some coupons kind of in a little colored section, standalone section. That's called a freestanding insert. Handouts, at events or things like that are print. Direct mail is a very effective in terms of communication because it could be very personalized. It's got a lot of formats. You can test, mail something to 10,000 people, mail something else to 20,000 people. And the depth of sale and the time spent with it, if it's effective and the person's interested in your content, they actually open it up and read it, The depth of sale is just huge. And a key disadvantage is it's very, very expensive. It's expensive to